Hello and welcome to today's video. Before we get started, I have a quick question for you. Do you recognize this photograph? How about this one? Maybe even this one? Well, if you recognize any of these photos, then you are already familiar with photos taken on the wet collodion process, also known as tintypes. My name is Jake and welcome to the very first episode of the Who's and What's of Photography. My wife Haley and I took a visit down to Silver and Cedar, a tintype portrait studio in Phoenix, Arizona, where we got to see this process for the first time. So I wanted to take you guys along for the journey and teach you a bit about the history and the process of producing these unique and timeless portraits. Before we dive in, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit that bell notification if you want to stay updated on everything of the who's and what's of photography. Now, let's go back to the very beginning. Tintype photography was invented in 1853 by Adolphe Alexander Martin in France, but wasn't popularized until 1856 when it was patented by Hamilton Smith in the United States. These thin metal plates provided a way of photographing everything from presidents to Civil War soldiers to even outlaws of the Wild West. But more importantly, it provided an accessible and affordable way for families to immortalize their loved ones like never before. Tintypes flourished throughout the 1860s and 70s, but began to dwindle during the 20th century. But today, there are still artists and photographers alike who create their works through this process. Now, follow me into Silver and Cedar, where Matthew, the owner and photographer, let me film the process of me and my wife getting our portraits taken in one of the oldest formats possible from start to finish. The wet plate process needs to be fairly quick. Once the wet plate is produced, it can't be stored for long periods of time like most modern films, so we start the session out by mixing all the necessary materials. Once we have all the necessary materials, the wet plate is ready to be produced. We start with a sheet of aluminum coated with a dark enamel, and coat it with the collodion solution. The tintype isn't light sensitive just yet, so this step is able to be done in the light. Next, the plate is placed into a tank where it will soak in a silver nitrate solution, where it will become photosensitive and is one step closer to becoming a photograph. While the wet plate soaks for a few minutes, Matthew poses my wife and I and gets a final focus. And all that's left to do now is load the plate into the camera and capture the image. Next, we step back into the darkroom where the developer is poured onto the plate and then is shocked with running water. This reveals what is essentially a negative. Once that step is completed, the plate is no longer light sensitive, so now we get to step into the light where Matthew will pour the fixer, revealing the final image, completing this magical process. You might have noticed how dark some features such as freckles or even scarring can look in these portraits. This is because tintypes are only sensitive to blue light, which causes such features to show through more prominently than you may be used to. This is a part of why I think this process is so special for portraits. It captures who we are, imperfections and all. Seeing this process firsthand was truly remarkable, and Matthew's passion for what he does shines through in not only his process, but in the art that he creates. I want to express how thankful I am of Matthew for sharing this process with me, and for letting me talk his ear off about everything from analog to darkroom equipment, and for giving people the opportunity to have their portraits captured in one of the oldest and the most unique ways possible. Thank you for joining me through this journey of the history and process of tintype photography. Seeing one of the oldest photographic processes for the first time was truly remarkable, and if you're ever given the opportunity, I highly suggest you take it. Thank you again so much for watching. Feel free to like and subscribe and ring that bell notification if you want to stay notified, and you might learn something new on the next episode of The Who's and the What's of Photography. Bye-bye.